Hello and welcome to the Rugby Review Show here on New Zealand Sports Radio. Yes, it's our Sunday 8 p.m. chat where we go through all of the action from the weekend. And boy, oh boy, it was big weekend, wasn't it? Because you know what? We had the Mitre 10 Cup Championship final between Hawke's Bay and Northland, which I don't think went, well, I guess the end result was where we expected it to be. But boy, oh boy, it didn't look like that at half time. We then also had the Auckland versus Tasman Premiership final in the Mitre 10 Cup, and boy, oh boy, again down to just 1 point. So really tense game there in that one. We also had the Pumas against the All Blacks. The All Blacks coming off back-to-back losses and their first ever loss against to the Pumas. The Pumas coming off beating the All Blacks, drawing with the Wallabies. Could they keep it up 3 weeks on the trot? I must admit, I have not been so hyped for a game in a long time as that one. That one really got me going in the warm up. We might also touch on a couple of games that have come out of Europe as well: England versus Wales and France versus Italy. And to join me to go through all of that, it's none other than Mr. Stephen Harris. How are you doing, sir?
Oh, very good, thank you, Paul. Always a privilege and a pleasure to be on the show, and it's with a tinge of sadness as well, knowing that we've just seen the last two games of the 2020 Mitre 10 Cup season, but it's not quite the end of it. We got another game coming up locally next weekend.
Well, yes, don't forget, folks, here we will be back next weekend because we do have that local game that Stephen's talking about, which is the Maori All Blacks versus the Moana Pacifica, but also the final game of the Rugby Championship is next weekend as well, with the Pumas versus the Wallabies there. Whilst the All Blacks are in a pole position to win the tournament, one of those two teams could potentially win it. I need to go away and look at the actual combination, the situation, but that is my understanding. Hey, Alex, great to see you here on the live chat. Wonderful to have you here with us. And also, obviously, next weekend we have the finals of the Autumn Nations Cup up in up in Europe. There we go. Where do you want to start then? Should we start with the big game with the internationals, or do you want to start with the Mitre 10 Cup and where true rugby lovers love it?
Yeah, we'll start with the Mitre 10 Cup, the heart and soul of the New Zealand game, and of course we start with their championship final down in Napier on a Friday night. Napier, beg your pardon, Hawke's Bay going in as favourites, but like you say at the beginning, Paul, it didn't quite play out how we thought it would play out. Result probably what we expected, but not quite how it would eventually turn out.
It was it was a crazy first half, wasn't it? Because in that first half, what's it going to be? Round one games. I'd like the final. There we go. That's round 12. What are the finals? Because look, Northland got that early score, which really was, I think, which they really needed to make this a game, didn't they? If Hawke's Bay had come out, put on 10 points, then it would have been just ground out and the game would have been over. But both sides not very clinical, or both sides making mistakes that allowed the others to score in that first half. And it was all topsy-turvy, wasn't it? Crazy, some crazy rugby.
Yeah, probably in the case of Hawke's Bay, maybe not playing Northland quite enough. Respect that early try coming from a quick throw-in, which Rennie Ranger read reasonably well, and just obviously forced a period of attack. And from that attack, Northland scored from close range. But of course, one of the issues for Northland was just their defence at times, and then they let in a set try, and before you knew it, it was 7-all. Nero Foreman with a breaking a couple of tackles and sprinting away to score. So yeah, really, really crazy start to the game. It was almost like two teams had decided in the first half there wouldn't be any tackling in this championship final. Yeah,
I used to say we had those Lee score after just sort of 8 minutes. Low came straight back about 3 minutes later. They put on a second one with Formai, and you're thinking, oh, it's 12-7. Could it blow out here? But no, then it was Northland's turn to put on a couple of tries, with Grant getting one and then Robinson to take the lead, only for Biziani to pull it back, and it was all even at half time. And you're a bit breathless at that point. What did it look? 34 points in the first 40 minutes. and you're thinking, boy, if they keep up at this rate, it's going to be a cracker. But yeah, the second half didn't quite. I think the coaches had a word with some of the players and got them to calm down. Look, this is finals footy, folks. Don't get too carried away. And as you say, yeah, I think there was perhaps a bit too much energy coming into that game, and both of them were just too perhaps too hyped for the game. Remember, this is Northland's first ever final in this format, which is fantastic. Their last final was against the Vikings, which obviously was kind of the Hawke's Bay back then. Hawke's Bay Man two back together again, but that was when we had three level. Well, before my time anyway. So it's a long time ago, and yeah, I think that basically I think quite a lot of players perhaps have just had a bit too much hype during the week running up to this one, and it all was a bit crazy. As Oren says, it was a bit difficult keeping for some people keeping their eyes on this one because we had T20s going on left, right, and centre, and one-day internationals. So lots of cricket, and to be this late in the year playing this kind of rugby. I'm enjoying it, but I'm sure that people who like some of the sports are probably finding it a bit tough to keep track of everything, Steve.
Oh, very, very, very much so, Paul. It was listen. It was important to Northland to stay in touch at 17 all on half time, but it was actually really important that they started the second half well because they needed to take this game deep into the 80 minutes, but unfortunately it didn't quite happen. And I think once they fell a couple of tries behind, a bit of panic set in, and of course just losing Tom Robinson to an injury who'd just given them so much energy in the first half. I mean, to say he's got one of the outstanding stats in the Mitre 10 Cup, I believe, probably one of the top tacklers in the Mitre 10 Cup. And of course, once he left the field, I think they lost a lot of energy in and around their breakdown. Tactically, they played it reasonably well in the first half by playing most of the game in the Magpies half, but I thought their kicking game just went a little bit to pieces in the second half. And of course, one area where the Magpies exploited Northland was through the middle, and one Folau Whakatava just pretty much had, you could say, the game of the season and caused so much damage up the middle when the Northland Guard dogs just weren't watching. And I think that probably said to me at the end of the day how crucial it was losing somebody like Sam Nock, who's got so much pace and defensively does a lot of work in behind that second line. When breaks are made, you saw it with Formai and also Whakatava make those incredible breaks, and both of those leading to tries as well. And I think once Hawke's Bay got ahead, then you saw the leadership of Ash Dixon come into play. He'd obviously just done enough to lift the Hawke's Bay forward effort, and despite a mini little comeback where Northland gave himself a sniff of a chance when Tamati Tua scored to bring it back to about the eventual final score was at 36-24, 12 point spread. I think the game was as much as done. And listen, full credit to Hawke's Bay. I thought they were very good. Whakatava, I thought, was very good for Hawke's Bay. The loose forwards were a little bit quieter than what I've seen the Hawke's Bay loose forwards, but I thought up front there was a really good shift from Pody Dakate-Stones in the front row. Got a real generous round of applause when he left the field. And listen, I think it was just probably indicative of the effort on the night.
Yeah, I think what we also saw here was some of the play between Whakatava and also Devon Flanders. I mean, these guys have been playing together for quite a few years now, and because they've come up together through the levels, and I think that kind of the connectivity, the just knowing what each other would do really helped in that second half, where they tried to sort of guys, calm it down. Look, play what's in front of you. Look for don't think you can do stuff against this Northern team. You're going to have to look at when have you got the mismatches, when have you got the gaps, then go for it. And the fact that those combinations I think worked really well for them. Kurt Baker, particularly that first half, was one of the guys who lost his head and just thought he was playing sevens. managed to, and he was one of the guys who had to be really reined in a bit. But yeah, you're right. I mean, Will Grant, look, had a decent game. Don't get me wrong, but he's not a Super Rugby player, is he?
No.
Whereas Sam Knock is, and that was
No.
that different level of class of running the team.
No.
And then also when you got Daniel Hawkins on again, young guy, not used to this level. Again, didn't have a bad game, but having that combination of Grant and Hawkins, two inexperienced guys trying to run the show, is very different from having two guys with a lot more experience trying to do it. I think that was possibly Northland's problems as well.
Yeah, you saw an example, I think, early in the first half when Hawkins got a kick charge down and he was asking Grant to throw about a 15-metre pass back to him, where, you know, if Sam Knock's there, I think Sam Knock takes the responsibility of clearing the ball to touch. I think Hawkins is pretty inexperienced, but then again, I don't think he's probably experienced a final at this particular level, and I think at times it actually did show. Johnny Cooper offered something a little bit different, but to be honest, I think when he came on, they were in damage control. Listen, full credit to the two halfbacks, because basically what you were seeing was their number 3, and with Corey Taylor, the replacement who came on, that was their number 3 and number 4 halfbacks that you were watching. Of course, Harrison Levine, who's their number 2, opted out after round 3 to have shoulder surgery. Now, apparently they could have played him, but against the advice of the surgeon, they decided not to. And listen, it was the right result at the end of the day. I think Hawke's Bay are well and truly geared to go into the Premiership division. We saw the two best teams playing in the final, which was correct, but I think the right result in terms of the team that's going up, as you've seen in Super Rugby, beg your pardon, in Premiership Rugby, and we'll touch upon it shortly, you have got to have a strong squad across the board to basically make sure you can take the hit of injuries throughout the season. Listen, for the Northland Taniwha, they've got to be happy with where they finished up. If you remember, Paul, one of our very first interviews when NZ Sport Radio started up was with Cam Bell, the Northland CEO, and I can remember him saying, well, we haven't got much money. We haven't got much money for a player budget, no academy, no high performance centre. So listen, I think if we told him at the beginning of the season you'd be playing in the final, I'm pretty sure he would have taken that. So it'll be interesting to see how their reviews, player reviews, play out over the next couple of weeks or so. You know, we speak about that Hawke's Bay side being a very, very young side, and all those boys out of Hastings boys. I think it's probably time for Northland to inject a dose of youth into the Taniwha. Yep,
interesting. And one of the things that I'm going to be doing over the next week or two, will be having a chat with Campbell, the CEO for Northland. I've also got Aaron, the CEO for Counties Manukau, and I'm hoping to get the CEO for Southland on board as well, because they're all first-year CEOs for the provinces. And so I'm going to try and do a round table with the three of them. It might be too much of an ask. I might have to do them separately, but look out for those coming up, because I think it'll be really interesting to see how these guys have gone in their first year. Let's be honest, it's been a fun year, or it's been an unprecedented year to be thrown into the deep end. Definitely, as a CEO, you've got learning a lot of things. So it'll be, so we will be hearing from them. Boa comes in and says that one bridge too far with only one win from 6 previous visits to Hawke's Bay. And Northland don't want to hear this, but it's good that they didn't win this game. If they went up next year, they would really struggle in the Premiership, to be honest. Look, they don't have the player depth to cope at that level. But as you say, the right side won.
Paul, I was going to say we'll still work on getting you a Northland hoodie, despite what you just said, mate. So that'll be all good there. Listen, remiss of me just not to mention the coaching staff for Northland as well. George Cornier, Tui Rayleigh, and also Graham Hughes and the management team. Congratulations to them, but also congratulations to Mark Ozich and Josh Symes as well with the Hawke's Bay team. They've done an absolutely fantastic job, and they are well and truly geared to take on the Premiership.
Yep. Then moving on then to the to the following night, Aaron says, before the phone dies, very disappointed by Auckland in the final. Thought it was a poor effort, but they've been on a decline for the last few games. Look, I think there was definitely an element of Auckland kind of stumbling into the final to a degree. They started off the season really, really well, and did have a couple of not great performances towards the end of the season. But then again, I don't think the Marco were necessarily coming into this on massively high on form either. Actually, yes, one player we didn't talk about, Johnny Masalai, had a really good game for the Sunnyfire, and I think we'll see him. That's a name we're going to we should be seeing more of over the next year or so. I don't know what kind of contract he's got lined up next. Stephen, any news on that?
Well, he did have a contract earlier in the season. He was playing over in Japan, and because of COVID, he ended up back up New Zealand. I'd expect him to be re-signed by Northern. I know the Blues were interested in him as maybe a wider training squad player. So I think if he hangs around, we know we always have injuries at a Super Rugby level. But you'll see more of Johnny Masalai next Saturday night when he's part of the Mana Pacifica Barbarians. Is that what we call them, Paul?
No, just Mana Pacifica.
Mana Pacifica, beg your pardon.
Yep, no Barbarians piece. Paul Alexander also, Auckland's lineouts were shocking. Yeah, look, that first half, both sets of coaches would not have been particularly happy with the performances of their sides. Tasman were definitely on top in this one in that first half. I remember tweeting out, "Look, Tasman have really got no one else to blame if they lose this. They're throwing this game away." They were getting themselves into Auckland's territory and then giving away a penalty. And there seemed to be a lot of offensive penalties given away in this game, which meant neither side really got their things, got themselves going, or could really sort of march down the pitch. When you get a couple of defensive penalties, that basically puts you down the pitch and you can get some points on the board. If you're giving away attacking penalties, it's generally in the opposition half when you're going well. There were just too many attacking penalties given by both sides in this one. Defense was on top initially, weren't they, Stephen?
Yeah, I agree. Paul, the real disappointment for me, and I agree with Paul Alexander, and I'll be interested to get Paul's thought. The disappointing thing for me was, Celeste Rayasi has been one of the outstanding players in the Mitre 10 Cup, if not the outstanding player. But, at no stage yesterday did we actually see him with a bit of pace, or, there was a little bit of work around a midfield. Probably one of the risks that you have in having a winger at second five, Taniela Talia, who's been good for Auckland all season, but I don't know if there was a lot of creativity around that midfield, and I just wanted to actually see him with a little bit more as Stefan Minton basically also makes the same point. We just did not see that ball get wide and was a little bit disappointed. I think Auckland just fell into the trap of trying to take on Tasman around the fringes, but Tasman really, really stood up. In fact, the game, I thought, Paul, was really played between the two 22s.
Yeah, and that's kind of what happens when your defences can get on top, is that you don't seem to be able to get it to make that ground there, and that's part of it. And so coming in and with Tasman basically trailing all the way up until just before half time, and they got that try after time was up, and they really kind of needed that. And you were thinking, okay, they've got that try now. They've been on top. They've had the opportunity to get points, but not actually getting the points. That they'll push on in the second half, but that didn't really kind of happen. We only had 2 scores in that second half, and I think I tweeted even during the first half, where were the drop goals? When you know you're getting into the opposition's half, but you're not breaking them down to score points, you're not getting opportunities to kick penalties. There were just no drop goals going over, and you're thinking this game is screaming out being a 3-pointer. No one's scoring tries. No one's getting many points on the board. Every point's going to count. And the fact that we didn't have an attempted drop goal until the 78th minute, and that was a pretty shocking one when we got it, was to me was just an absolute did my head in as to why we didn't have more drop, some drop goals there. Just get that scoreboard ticking over. It was nuts.
Paul, I'm just nodding my head here because as you know, I watch a bit of the Premiership, and sometimes you are watching some very, very dour games. But boy, those Premiership teams, if they're not getting any headway and they've been down in an attacking region for a long time, they will take a drop kick. And really and truthfully, I think a lot of coaches have really got to change their mindset in and around the drop goal, because that's all it really came down to yesterday. Auckland, even at times in that last 5 minutes, I just thought, man, just keep picking and going towards the front of the post, but they actually kept using runners sideways, which I just found absolutely crazy, because you were just shutting. Now, I don't know whether they were trying to open up space in the middle of the paddock, but to my way of thinking, just keep going down that middle channel. That way you can actually draw some defenders in, and if there's the opportunity, you can move the ball a little bit wider. So really disappointing. And listen, Tasman were guilty of it as well. They turned down a couple of penalty opportunities as well, which could have stretched the score out. And in the end, it took a David Havili penalty, 35 odd metres on the angle to do the business. So there wasn't a lot of smart intellectual, I say, going on when these teams really, really needed it.
No, we're talking about Rayasi, but he got 7 carries in this game, which, sure, Ruru got 9, Tamua Manu got 8, but those 7 carries were 16 metres. So for a certain degree, you've got to say, look, Tasman did their homework, made sure he didn't get space in there. Whereas you look at someone like Lester Franuku, who got the ball 15 times for 79 metres, and you're like, yeah, there's a guy who he hasn't perhaps had the try scoring record that Rayasi has, but his power and he's been a great player this season.
Paul, great point. Listen, I think Auckland could have used Rayasi in the same way. Brought him off first 5, either inside or outside first 5, and just to hold that line. And that's what Whaianuku was doing every time in those 15 touches. I can guarantee he actually got over the advantage line. But more importantly, it took about 3 guys to pull him down, Paul. And that was the thing. And it was just enough go forward for Tasman to basically have the cleaners there all the time, because you didn't see a lot of turnover ball. And I think once they had nailed down that tactic, they just continually used it, despite losing Mitch Hunt so early in the game.
Yeah, you're actually having lost Mitch Hunt. They did very well to keep their game plan going with a very inexperienced player. Aaron brings up the point: are there any hookers in Auckland that can throw a ball into a lineup properly? Well, I'd rephrase any hookers in the country that can, because there's a lot of hookers, especially when I see younger hookers. Your older hookers, your Ash Dixons, your Olsen, those guys can throw in. But the younger hookers, I think there's been a lot of this kind of, right, your front row's got to be mobile around the pitch. So, guys, you've got to get your ball handling skills. You've got to get your mobility around the pitch. You've got to get your tackling up. I think there's been a lack of focus on the set piece for particularly front rowers, and that your scrummage, your props as well. There's quite a few props now. You go, oh yes, he's great around the park, but would you really want it? Will he lock the scrum out for you? Maybe not. And hence why someone like Carl Swaneka, who's come back from, was he 25, 26 before he actually got his first Super Rugby contract, came in. By that time because he was a scrummaging prop and got his scrummaging sorted out. Not perhaps the guy the most mobile around the pitch, especially in his younger days. I just think it's just something that's not valued by coaches or in the game nowadays. Is getting your set piece right and then building the other pieces onto it.
Paul, I agree with everything you say there. The other thing I was just going to touch upon, that's the 2 yellow cards. Well, yeah, listen, Angus Tarval one. He obviously ended up taking one for the team that already had prior warnings, and then of course he comes back on, and no sooner than he's trotting back on, Zane Sullivan gets one for a deliberate knockdown, and that was always going to be a yellow card. So you just felt Auckland were just always a little bit behind the eight ball in terms of trying to claw their way back in the game. But I will give them credit. They showed some tremendous tenacity to defend during that time where Tasman had two clear-cut chances. Obviously, the player going out in the corner and across the other side when all they needed was a good pass to Talia. But I think the last pass looked like it was heading to the men, somebody sitting in the grandstand, as opposed to Talia. And quite frankly, it could have changed completely. Stefan Minton just mentions a player who used to play club rugby in Auckland, Stacey Ely, from the Manukau club. I know Stefan's involved with some of these South Auckland clubs, and that's a real good point. Sometimes you need a bit of a stepper in the midfield. He mentions there Talia and Manu have the same sort of game where they're both power runners, and that's what I sort of meant before about maybe sometimes having somebody who's a little bit creative. And you've probably got to say they may have missed TJ Faiani, just a little bit more creative in and around that second five role, Paul. So listen, injuries happen. Every team's had to work with the injuries. Even Tasman throughout the season have lost some players through injury. I actually saw that when they were all hopping on the bus. Some of the players that they didn't have available through injury. It was actually quite frightening.
They have lost a bunch of players, but and there was kind of a bit. There's a fair made out of that in the in that. I've got to say that I think that, as you say, all teams lose players. So I'm not sure that Tasman were hurt any more than anyone else. But yeah, I think you're right. TJ Faiani, massive loss for this Auckland team. Remember 2 years ago when they went to the title, how did a lot of that come? Was TJ's breaks and then with Manu running off his shoulder. The number of times those two combined to score a try was unreal 2 years ago. So TJ Faiani being in a moon boot this whole season really has really been a big loss for this Auckland side, and also their captain as well. So that leadership as well that I think that obviously they could have done with from there. Look, Tasman were the right side, were the better team. They should not have left this down to 1 point. Look, Auckland could have snatched it at the end, but just couldn't get that drop goal over. Couldn't hold on to the ball, and you got to say that I said the right team won, and they should have won by a bigger margin. They didn't play well.
Paul, one thing I do want to quickly touch upon, and it was something that we brought up in the press box. There was a lot of kicking, a lot of box kicking going on, and of course something that I actually thought Tasman did really well with their high kicks. The kicks from Christie were really well placed, and they actually flooded the middle of the field with a lot of players. So when the catcher was going there, he had a lot of players in front of him, and there seemed to be a lot of blue and red bodies in front of him. And it basically in his eye line, not doing anything illegal, but just putting enough pressure on the catcher. And I thought they did really, really well. Where I thought Auckland, from a Jonathan Ruru point of view, I actually thought their tactics were poor, because David Havili is very good under the high ball, and I think Auckland, if they were to kick, I think they were better off kicking longer and away from Havili. Just your thoughts?
Yeah, I thought Lester Fanaku was also really good under the high ball as well. Again, as you say, do you really care how many bodies are in front of you? If you're as powerful as he is, you're going to come down and smack them out of the way. So perhaps by having his physicality means that he doesn't have to worry quite so much about all those players being in the way, kind of thing. Kicking. I understand. Okay, there's been a lot of talk this past week that the side that kicks the most wins the games, and that's come out from the All Blacks. It's also come out in Europe as well. The side that kicks the most wins the game. But when you're kicking to a back three of, as you say, Whanganuku, Talea, and Havili, at some point they're going to hurt you, right? They're going to diffuse most of the things, and they're going to hurt you. So it's not a good move. Sure, you don't want to play too much rugby in your own half, but you want to make sure it bounces and goes out, and then try and contest at the line out. But then again, as Paul Alexander says, yeah, the lineouts were shocking. So, but both lineouts were both teams actually were better off asking the opposition to throw in for them, because they stole more than actually won. So I think actually, because both teams' lineups, especially in that first half, were not working. Yeah, just make sure you hit grass, get the ball to roll out, and then challenge the line out in their half, because they're not going to maul you from 60 meters. So just pin them back and just put pressure on that line out, because it was creaking. So why not? But so you're right. Game management from both teams, game management particularly from Auckland. It was more execution from Tasman. A bit of game management around the fact not taking drop goals, but game management from Auckland, yeah, you're right. They got it wrong. But their defence was really good. I mean, look, they stayed in this game right up until the end, despite despite Tasman having 8 clean breaks to Auckland's 1. So the scrambled defence, the amount of work they were putting in, was impressive by this Auckland team. There was plenty of heart there. They just came up against a better side in the day.
Yeah, exactly. Paul, if we're looking around for players of the day, well, I think there's probably a couple to me that stood out for Tasman. Obviously, Lester Fire Nuku, I thought was the outstanding player on the paddock. He did most things well. He beat tackles all the time, took the ball high. He was probably my player of the day. And listen, I thought closely followed by, I thought Hugh Renton was very good in the pack, really accurate, and being there at the ground, he was always geeing the players up. Got a couple of key turnovers near the end of the game as well, and probably one of their unsung heroes, along with their skipper Quinton Strange, who was very good. Always a good source of ball when the line out was functioning. That is, I thought he was very good. And in terms of Auckland, I've got to scratch my head a little bit to think who maybe was their player of the day. Paul, listen, I love the way Adrian Choate plays the game. He always puts in a very honest effort, and I thought him and Nico Jones were really good value for Auckland. In an area at breakdown where I thought probably they were slightly edged on the night by Tasman. Talking
of Jones, Michael Jones, your interview with him is up on our Facebook page. So, folks, if you want to hear his thoughts after the game, go over to our Facebook page for Stephen's interview with Michael Jones. You also had a chat with Hugh Renton and somebody else. I've gone blank who the player was now.
Oh, Kieran. Well, I thought Kieran Fonatia would be an interesting one, because he looked like he'd already had a couple of beers, so I thought he would probably say anything at the time. But listen, he was like a little kid at a candy store. To one of the highlights of his career has obviously been over in Wales, playing for both the Ospreys and Scarlets as well. So to be back in New Zealand and win a Mitre 10 Cup title on Eden Park, hey, he said it's what dreams are made of. So also look out for that interview as well. Speaks very, very frankly. He spoke about the size of the Auckland backs, because Kieran's not a small man himself. Over 6 foot, but he said the Auckland backs are absolutely like giants, and he was absolutely wrapped that the Tasman forwards for the main part and their game drivers kept the ball away from them. So that was quite an interesting comment.
Yeah, no, so let's move on to the big game of the weekend. I was getting really amped for this game, the Pumas versus the All Blacks pre-game. So now I put a tweet out saying that this was a must-win game for the All Blacks, and a couple of weeks come back and say, "Oh, every game for the All Blacks is a must-win game," and I'm like, "No." There are some games. Look, there is an expectation that the All Blacks will win every game. Absolutely, I get that, but a game where you've got a total set of where you've changed 23 players and you're up against Japan, doesn't have a must-feel win about it. Yes, you're going to win it, but it's not like we have the pressure's on to win this game. The pressure wasn't on last weekend, 2 weekends ago, to beat the Pumas. because people were expecting them to win, and we expected the game to sort of play out probably the way this one did actually. So I think I think the amount of not stress is the wrong word here, but yeah, the amount of stress that I've been feeling, or the amount of focus on we have to win this game. I think it was much higher in this game than probably the All Blacks have felt since a knockout game in the Rugby World Cup.
Oh, absolutely, Paul. Listen, I'm almost remiss of us. We congratulated the Hawke's Bay coaches, but we should congratulate the Tasman coaches as well. Andrew Goodman, Clark Dermody, and of course Shane Christie. They are back-to-back champions, the Tasman Mako. And just finally a quick word for Alama Iramia and also Philo Tia. Alama, very, very gracious. A little funny moment. We were just about to start the press conference, and Tasman started breaking out in their song, and we waited to start the press conference until the song was finished, and I must admit it gave Alama a bit of a somber Alama Iramia a bit of a chuckle, and I thought to myself, gee, you're a class act, despite the frivolity going on in the background from Tasman. So congratulations to both those sides. I think for Auckland going forward, I think they've got a good thing, a lot of good young players. But listen, Paul, for me, I missed the first 30 minutes of that All Black game last night, but I was tuning into the radio commentary last night. It just sounded like the All Blacks had a lot of ball in that first half. And yeah, I agree with your comments before. It was a must-win game because Ian Foster would have had more than a rock in his back over summer. It would have felt more like a sword in his back, especially by not just the New Zealand Rugby Union public, but also the press here in New Zealand. Yeah,
I mean, look, it's been an age since it's been a long time since they've lost back-to-back games. This year, this game, their next game will be in July probably. So to go to be going into a 6-month layoff and to lose that and to go with a lost game would have been massive, and would have just been 6 months of negative press, all shooting at Ian Foster. Now, is he going to get massive praise and massive positive press in the next 6 months? No, but at least he could turn around and go, "I won my last game." You're only as good as your last game. Mm-hmm. So he's got some sort of defence for that. Alex says it was like the All Blacks dusted off the old game plan from the McCourt era, and yeah, the big difference. And it only took the first 5 minutes before you knew this was the All Blacks were going to win this one, purely down to the fact they were getting over the gain line, and the Pumas were not being able to slow down the All Blacks ball. And if you're getting over the gain line and you're getting pretty quick, decent, good ball, that set of backs and forwards are going to cause you a lot of problems. Previous weeks they haven't. The physicality of the Pumas meant that they could that the All Blacks weren't getting over that gain line. They were getting the All Blacks involved in a bunch of stuff that wasn't actually playing rugby, and we didn't see that as much this game. And I thought, to me, it was summed up by a player that we have we criticised in the past because he has historically got involved in just too much off the ball stuff, which is Akira Ioane. During this game, Kramer had a go at scrum time at the scrum half, which would have been Aaron Smith at the time, and Akira. And I'm just like, oh, Akira Ioane is the blindside flanker. He's right there. This is going to kick off. No. What did Akira Ioane do? He stood between Kramer and the scrum half to protect his scrum half, like a good forward is supposed to do. But he just stood there and just looked at it. He didn't put his hands up. He didn't start mouthing off. He didn't escalate it. He just went, I'm protecting my scrum half, and I'm just going to block it. And I'm just going to stand here and not get involved. And to me, I think that was as Aaron says, I think Akira needs a mention. To me, he looks like he's finally starts to mature. And I thought, yes, exactly. I guess that's the point I'm making here is that, yeah, he and if he is maturing and behaving like that, then you've got to say that being the rookie in the side, you're taking the lead off the other leaders in there. And if Sam Cane had been saying pre-game, guys, in their face, no backward step, then he would have stepped up and started something. But clearly, he was following the lead of the older players, and it was a very good performance from them from that point of view as well.
Paul, I think we've also, I think he made a little bit of a mini statement as well. That number 6 jersey for the All Blacks has never really been nailed down since Jerome Kaino moved on from the All Blacks. Of course, they've tried a few people, Liam Squire, Via Fafita. They've also tried, jeepers, it's gone out of my head, Boyfriend.
Frizzell's been in there. We've also had Fafita has had a go. There's been a few players who have been tried out there and not really nailed it. So here's a question for you then. You've just Stephen's gone and lost the sound, unfortunately. But when he comes back, if someone can put in the comments whether they can still hear me, that'd be much appreciated. Stephen's dropped off. We'll come back. But yes, so as I said, this could be the start of something special for the All Blacks with the maturity and calmness and discipline they showed. Absolutely, much better performance. Again, Dane Coles, another player, gets involved. Didn't get involved this time, which was really good. So Stephen's back, and can he hear me again? No, he still can't hear me. So unfortunately, we'll have to wait and see if Stephen can get himself sorted out. Hopefully, Akira is ready to take Kano's mantle, but bring his own style. Yes, look, we don't want people trying to copy players. But if he can, that would be good. So we got Stephen back there.
We have.
That's good. So I was going to say, it'd be good if Akira can nail down that 6 jersey. I put a tweet out though, but who would have thought, and before this weekend, that Akira Iwani might get more caps than Rieko Iwani as an All Black?
Yeah, exactly. That could be on the card, especially if he nails down that jersey. Of course, Rico's still trying to find his way in that number 13 jersey. But what I like about Akira, we saw his full range of skills. We know that he's a good ball carrier. We know that he's tackling, but he's just doing all things really well, and a really good line-out option as well. We know he's got really, really good hands. We don't often see Akira drop passes.
True, but it's kind of really interesting that I think there was a mention during the build-up that I think he only took 2 line-outs for the Blues in the entire season, and that actually he isn't normally a line-out option. I think partially maybe his weight means that he's not the best person to for lifting. He's got good hands for when he's because obviously being a sevens player. But perhaps the line-out option is the one little area that they need to perhaps work on a bit. But if you've got if you're playing Ardy Surveyor is a line-out option, and then if you've got Ardy plus the 2 locks, do you need more than 3 really? It's again, just because you've got 6 on your back doesn't mean you have to be. It's the balance of those back 3. One of them has to be a line-out option. So it doesn't necessarily have to be him if someone else can do it.
I agree.
Obviously the other happy thing is they were very happy about the fact they nilled this Argentina side. Now, Aaron did make the point. Look, there were 10 changes there for the Pumas. Now, so clearly this is not the same Pumas side they played 2 weeks ago. Having Argentina being asked to play 4 back-to-back tests. Against the 2 against the Wallabies and 2 against the All Blacks. I'm not sure that even a Rugby World Cup, when you do the quarterfinals, semi-finals, final, you're only playing 3 back-to-back. So this is probably as hard a 4 weeks as they will ever get. And to expect the same side to roll out for 4 weeks in the trot was always not just was never going to be possible. I think we all knew that they were going to struggle towards the end of this series because, it's just too much too much there
Yeah.
for them to play. So so what do you think about Savet, Ardi, Akira, and Satutu as your back three, or you have Kane being in there at the moment soon?
It's probably not going to happen, Aaron, because the captain's not there. I think that might be your back row if Kane ever got injured. I would suggest, but no, you'd still have Kane in there. I mean, as I say, Sam Kane was still pretty accurate in this Test match, especially over the ball. You mentioned those combinations with Argentina before. I don't think they could get anything going because their set piece was under the pump, and you could just see the miscommunication when they did try to attack, and it was probably even more exploited when their reserves came on later in the game. A couple of misdirected passes that got picked off by Will Jordan, who we'll get to a little bit later, Paul. So yeah, with all those changes, yeah, it wasn't going to be easy to bet in. Although I actually was really impressed with them defensively. They scrambled really well, and at times they flood support areas to stop continuity, and they do that really, really well. Just something else I noticed too on I think defensive lineouts. They seem to shift Sanchez into the lineout. I don't know if you noticed that. So they obviously don't like him defending in the line, where he goes into the line out and he defends on the side where the attack goes away from. Interesting tactic, and that's a Michael Cheika move, from what I believe.
Yeah, Cheika, we've definitely seen players like Quade Cooper and begins with
Foley, maybe Foley.
Yeah. And Foley would defend in what would traditionally be the hooker position in the tram lines at a line out, which is all good and well if you as long as the opposition actually win their line out. If you win your line out and you then try and counterattack with your playmaker pretty much as far right on the edge of the pitch, it doesn't work. So I get what they're trying to do. They're trying to protect that 10 channel, but it does mean that if you win the ball, you don't get the opportunity to counterattack because you have to take 2 phases to reset and get your playmaker back in position.
Yeah.
So it swings and roundabouts. I'm not a great fan of it because of that point. Alex, yeah, look, there are a number of teams at the moment, and the Pumas are one. England are another one. That basically the game plan is get a few points on the board, get in front, and then just defend and tackle for your lives. And I don't mean that necessarily in a desperate way, but just because they are so good at tackling and so good at defense, which does mean this Pumas side cannot afford to go behind. A bit like, I'm not sure, whilst the England side are playing very well at the moment, if that England side goes behind, I can see them trying to play catch-up rugby is difficult. It's a game plan that works really, really well when you get in front, and you're because that stifling defense they've worked a lot on is massive. And you look at this, the Argentinian side here. As Akura, the scrum half, made 13 tackles in this game. Montoya with 10, Medrano 14, Pagad Deval's at the lock 13, Mitre 14, Kramer 15, Issa 13. Look, they got through a lot of work. Look, that's and they did it very well. They didn't miss that many tackles, but they did spend a lot of time defending, and they're happy to do that. But the point is, they need to get the points on the board first because they can't chase a game, unfortunately. But they are making themselves very difficult to beat.
Absolutely, Paul. Just get the attack side of their game right. That'll be the really key. So for me, attack. Some of their skill sets do need a little bit of improvement as well. But like you say, totally agree with you. When they get behind, a couple of tries behind, all of a sudden I would suggest their game plan goes out the window. There were a couple of little nice moves that they actually got in behind the All Blacks, but once again, the All Blacks did what they did to them, flooded the support, got people over the ball, and of course you create turnovers because let's not get away from it. They do have a really attacking back three, who have all got pace and can attack from the back. So, earlier, as previously said, they had to rest some players after 3 weeks in a row. And I think they're going to throw the kitchen sink at Australia next week. I mean, so how good would it be to get a victory over both the All Blacks and the Australians, along with a draw? You know, despite maybe not having enough points to win this particular championship, boy, that would be successful campaign.
Yep. I think getting the first win over the All Blacks and getting a draw with the Wallabies, this is a successful campaign for them already. But yeah, if they get a win next weekend, they'll be over the moon. So the top meters run for the All Blacks was Will Jordan with only 4 runs, 121 meters. Artie Surveyor 15 carries for 47 meters. Will Jordan 4 for 121. He came on and it was against a tiring defence, and he had 2. He was look, you've got to be in the right place at the right time and then have the pace to finish it off. Those the opportunities dropped into his lap, and boy oh boy, did he take them with both hands. So, are you one of the ones that still has some big question marks around selecting players out of position, particularly in that back three?
I kind of do, and I go back to that interview we had with Shane from Gainline Analytics, who basically said, "Listen, stats don't lie. The All Blacks are successful when they've got a settled team, not chopping and changing." And I still think we're chopping and changing. If this is going to be our permanent midfield, stick to these guys. I'm not sold on Jordie Barrett as a winger. But I do believe somebody like Will Jordan, while he's a fullback, just possesses a little bit more X factor and a little bit more pace. Can do something out of nothing. I think the likes of Caleb Clark has got one of those wings very much down pad, because he just offers so much power. But I think it's now time for these All Black coaches to settle on whatever their best 23 is.
Yeah, I'm. Whilst I think, Beauden Barrett 2 times World Player of the Year, it's very difficult to leave him out. Jordie Barrett has been playing fantastically at 15 this season, and I would look at putting him back at 15, and I would actually put Beauden either probably at 10, and I'd drop Rich Mwanga to 21. Now a lot of people say no, Rich Mwanga has earned that jersey. And that actually Beauden's perhaps the one that should or Jordie should drop out into that 23 jersey. I think Jordie's had a fantastic year at 15, and just the length of his kicking and just having that available is just. And he is an X factor player himself. He does not in the flashy way that Jordan does, but he is at the right. He's not the right place, at the right place at the right time. And knows his way to the line. So, I would actually look at dropping Richard Mwanga personally. There are just too many players to try and fit in there that you're going to have some extreme quality on the bench.
Look at Damian Mckenzie. Once upon a time he was always a feature of this all black team. But boy, now not what to do with DMac. We know he what he can bring to the table, but boy, is he just one of these players that is just paying the price for being a jack of 2 good trades at 10 and 15, but a master of maybe none of them.
I think he's a player that's just that's paying the price for getting injured at the wrong time. He was the key player in that All Blacks 2019 squad heading to the Rugby World Cup. He was the guy that was going to give them the right balance in the overall 31-man squad. And was irreplaceable at 15. You had to play him at 15. You had to have Barrett at 10. He got injured, and that threw an awful lot of plans out the window. And some of the All Blacks coaches were scrabbling up for Plan B. So for me, I would it's a shame, but you got to say. Will Damian Mckenzie get another All Black cap? I mean, not in the first choice side. I don't think so. Unless Geordie Barrett has said in the past that his position is 12. So will we see him a bit like Rico Iwani said? My position is 13.
Oh.
Will we see Geordie try and move into that 12 jersey? We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, we just seem to be flooded with a whole lot of outside backs at the moment. It's a case of wanting to know exactly who you're going to have in there, because even back here in New Zealand, we saw two guys running around last week who would never let an All Black jersey down in Rayasi, while we didn't see a lot of them. But you also look at somebody like David Havili, who's a fantastic footballer. Jeepers. Good under the high ball. You know, these two guys, if they're anywhere else in the world, they're probably playing international rugby right now. So the good news for Ian Foster, well, you've got another 3 years, mate, to figure out who your top 15 is. If you can't work that out already, well, that's you've got problems, really.
Well, and then you talk about someone like Lester Ugu. Where does he fit in? I've got a funny feeling he might have to play for the Pacific Islands. I'm quite sure what his heritage is, but I wonder if he can get himself. He's another player that looks totally like ready for international rugby again, and a bit like Caleb Clark with that power game. It's something that I think he'll bring that other players can't. And I think Damian Mckenzie. Alex says that Geordie's boot ages Damian Mckenzie. I think also his size. I think I think it's one of those things we sort of say if you is that we've always been a little bit of a question mark is Damac big enough for international rugby? And he was, but not yet. Simon says, are fixtures for next year's July internationals confirmed? I've heard it's Italy we're playing in a 2-test series. Wow, that'll be interesting. Now, next year being is in theory a Lions year. So England, Ireland, Scotland, and Wales basically are not available to tour. So France, by the sounds of it, is going to Australia. Looking at Simon's one, which means then we get Italy here in New Zealand. So it's a bit of a weak July internationals window if they do go ahead. I mean, we've still got COVID. It's still an issue, folks. Yes, there are talks of a vaccine, but I can't see that the world will return to normal by July next year. So we're going to have to see how that all pans out. Stephen, being a Lions year, a pretty weak a weak July window for Foster to get 3 wins in, which he'll be happy with.
Yeah. he should be. It's quite interesting. I thought I know we'll get to them very shortly, but I thought I'd have a look at the England team, and sort of compare them to the team that we actually saw at the World Cup. Now you pretty much go through that England pack, especially of Mako Vunipola, Jamie George, Kyle Sinclair, Mario Toje, Joe Launchbury, Tom Curry, Sam Underhill, Billy Vunipola. Well, that's almost a year, and it's pretty much almost the same pack that England fielded against the All Blacks over 12 months ago, Paul. So it just shows you they're relatively consistent as well. And even if you look into their backline, Elliot Daly, Jonathan Joseph, Henry Slade, Owen Farrell, Johnny May, George Ford, and Ben Youngs, pretty close to the same side. You can see Eddie Jones not making a hell of a lot of changes, just trying to stay completely with that same winning formula.
Yeah, and also look, there's a bunch of young guys there. So I mean, Jonathan Joseph, moving on to the wing is perhaps the one change. We've also seen Jack now, I think, who's injured now, has been sort of out there at the Rugby World Cup. But apart from that, you are looking at pretty much the World Cup side. They've lost Cruis and so he's gone to Japan. I think Courtney Laws also is perhaps getting on and perhaps won't make it to the next Rugby World Cup. So he's probably been moved on. So look, they're keeping the core of the squad together, plus changing a few. Probably on the bench, there's probably a couple of names who weren't around at the last Rugby World Cup. But apart from that, you're right. He is sticking with that. But again, they're instead of playing 2 fullbacks, he's playing extra centre as a winger. in Jonathan Joseph. So yeah, a different approach by Eddie Jones. And look, again, they got themselves ahead of Wales and just defended, just like against Ireland. And look, they whilst it looks like a fairly close score, Wales weren't really. It was a much better performance by Wales, but they weren't really going to beat England. But I just want to bring up the table for the Rugby Championship, and then we can you can see there that New Zealand top of the table now on 11 points, and with a points difference of 64 points, means that even if Argentina or Australia get the try bonus point win, the All Blacks will come out with the championship. Both those sides, Argentina on minus 28 and Australia on minus 36 now, after their 3 games. Both those sides scored. Well, they're scoring at about 12, 13 points a game, whereas the All Blacks scoring it closer to 30, which tells you a story definitely there. Argentina 3 games, 1 try. Look, it's built off defence, I think, which is what we talked about. Whereas Australia, they've got 3 tries in their 3 games, and again, not a high-scoring team so far. But it'll be interesting to see how it all pans out next weekend. It should be a cracking game between the Pumas and Australia. Any final points, Stephen? You want to sort of talk about?
No, there's probably not much to say. Just looking at table, something super extraordinary would have to win to basically change those averages around. Those 2 teams would have to conspire and have maybe a no tackle game in that final test to get the averages right. But I'd say the All Blacks have got this one pretty wrapped up, because I think for Argentina to beat Australia, they'd have to play a similar sort of game that they did against Australia in the last test. I think it would be almost suicidal for them to go out with an open game plan that would play more into Australia's hands. Listen, I'm expecting Australia to bounce back in this game. I think they would be pretty irked that they didn't take that win against Argentina in that last game. Had they taken that win, they'd be sitting very, very pretty to take out this championship, Paul.
Absolutely. And also, look, as we said, four test matches back to back over 4 weekends for the Pumas. It's going to take its toll. So looking forward to the game. I can't see the Pumas beating the Wallabies by 90 points, and I can't see the Wallabies beating the Pumas by 100 points they need to take out the championship. So the All Blacks should be crowned champions in isolation next weekend. So, folks, do join us on Tuesday evening at 8 p.m. for the Driving Maul Show. Perhaps have some Mitre 10 Cup awards to give out, I think, in that one, as well as discuss any other topics. If you've got any questions for us, please do let me know at Driving Maul on Twitter, or you can leave a comment if you're on New Zealand Sports Radio or nzsportradio.com. Leave a comment at the bottom of this post, and you'll be able to and we'll answer your questions on Tuesday evening at 8 p.m. Thank you very much, Stephen, for joining me. It's been an absolute cracking weekend of rugby, and folks, hope you've all enjoyed your wonderful weekend.